protection course, and this, and they were like, I'm going all the way down, Chief. And then, yeah.
It's hard not to.
Good afternoon. I'm Grant Jaquith. I'm the first Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of New York, which encompasses St. Lawrence County and 31 other counties. And I'm here to talk about the sentence imposed on Patrick Lloyd today in United States District Court in Albany. I'm joined by law enforcement and community leaders, including from Homeland Security Investigations, Deputy Special Agent in Charge Mike Kennedy, and Resident Agent in Charge Russ Lindstedt. From U.S. Customs and Border Protection, Port Director Robert Dwyer, Chief Customs and Border Protection Officer Susan Boslett, Supervisory Customs and Border Protection Officer Adam Austin, Division Chief Todd Jewell, Patrol Agent in Charge Wade Loffman, and Supervisor Tracy Casey. From the New York State Police, Station Commander Sergeant Darren Chartrand. From the New York State Attorney General's Office, First Deputy Chief Investigator John Reedy. St. Lawrence County Under Sheriff Brooks Bigwharf. Chief Assistant District Attorney Frank Casator from the St. Lawrence County District Attorney's Office. From the St. Regis Mohawk Tribal Police, Chief Matthew Rourke and Lieutenant Dakota Thompson. Chief Adam Love of the Massena Police Department, Massena Mayor Timmy Currier, and also from the United States Attorney's Office, Assistant United States Attorneys Katie Capita and Richard Southwick. We're here rather than in the federal courthouse in our capital city in recognition and support of the Massena area for your resilience and resolve to fight back against purveyors of poison like the Lloyd Drug Trafficking Organization, and to promote prevention and demand reduction as essential to public health and safety. Earlier today, Patrick Lloyd was sentenced to serve 25 years in prison, to be followed by supervised release for 10 years. Actually, federal sentences are announced in months, so he was sentenced to 300 months. He pled guilty in federal court last August to charges related to his distribution of crack cocaine, and heroin in the Massena area, and to his possession of guns while distributing drugs. In imposing the sentence, Senior U.S. District Judge Gary L. Sharp called Lloyd's conduct drug terrorism. From 2012 through September of 2013, Lloyd led a drug trafficking organization bringing heroin and cocaine from New York City for distribution in the Massena area. Lloyd had couriers transport the drugs to stash houses in Massena, from which co-conspirators distributed them on consignment and then paid Lloyd or Michael Spencer. Lloyd had some of the cocaine cooked into crack for sale. Both Lloyd and Spencer possessed firearms while dealing these drugs. At the same time, a drug trafficking organization run by Matthew Malou also operated in Massena, and the Lloyd and Malou organizations became violent rivals. In June of 2012, Lloyd and Spencer robbed and assaulted members of the Malou organization, stealing cocaine from them and distributing it. 4 months later, members of the Malou organization retaliated by assaulting Lloyd, Spencer, and others at an apartment in Massena after co-defendant Catherine Berry informed Malou of Lloyd's whereabouts. After the assailants left, Lloyd went inside and found his co-conspirators, who had been stabbed, beaten, shot, and tied up. On December 22, 2012, Lloyd and co-conspirators Javar Sturridge and Travis Moore arranged for Bernie Russo to transport 177 grams of cocaine, 118 grams of heroin, and 2 firearms for the organization. U.S. Border Patrol agents stopped Russo and Lloyd and seized the cocaine, heroin, and firearms. A few months later, Lloyd assaulted Berry in retaliation for the October assault by the Malou organization. He was arrested and charged with assault and attempted kidnapping. He eventually posted bail and was released on pretrial supervision, but was arrested again on April 11, 2013 at Kimberly Jandrew's apartment and has remained in custody since then. Jandrew was also arrested that day after she was found to be in possession of about 28 grams of cocaine. On July 7, 2013, Spencer arranged for John Garcia to transport drugs to Plattsburgh via bus. Garcia was accompanied by Justin Brailsford. New York State troopers stopped Brailsford and Garcia and found them in possession of approximately 1,160 packages of heroin and approximately 175 grams of cocaine. You can see the heroin and cocaine in this picture. The heroin's the small packets and the cocaine is the bigger one. Lloyd continued to monitor the daily activities of the organization from jail. He arranged for Spencer and Jessica Monahan to convince Berry to recant her statement regarding the assault and attempted kidnapping, but later pled guilty in state court. On September 5, 2013, search warrants were executed. At Spencer's residence, agents seized a 9mm Taurus handgun with a loaded magazine, 2 grams of crack, a digital scale, an Orion flare gun modified to shoot .22 caliber rounds, a .25 caliber Titan handgun with a magazine and ammunition, and 30 grams of cocaine. Total seizures related to the Lloyd organization included 410 grams of cocaine, 2 grams of crack, and 228 grams of heroin. Lloyd is the 13th member of his drug trafficking organization to be convicted and sentenced. And you can see that other sentences exceeded 5 years. There's 5, 10, and 15 years, again, all in months. So 60, 120, and 180 months. In the investigation of the Malou organization, law enforcement seized 200 grams of heroin, 27 grams of crack cocaine, and 29 grams of powder cocaine, and 4 defendants have been convicted and sentenced. And you don't have to scribble too furiously because we'll give you this information at the end. And you can take pictures of it afterwards too if you want. There's the Malou group with 2 defendants who received sentences over 5 years, 63 and 65 months. For every problem, there is a solution. Lloyd's nickname is Problem, but thanks to this case, he will not be a problem for the North Country anymore. The credit goes to these leaders, their law enforcement agencies, and the many other federal, state, local, tribal, and Canadian agencies that came together to stop these 2 criminal organizations that brought drugs and violence to the gateway to America's 4th coast. Lloyd's sentencing marks the end of this investigation, but not to our commitment to keeping this and other North Country communities safe. The U.S. Attorney's Office and the agencies assembled here will continue to work together to ensure that violent criminals and dealers of dangerous drugs are held accountable. We will share the natural beauty of your forests, fields, and waterways and your historic villages and towns with visitors, but not with poison pushers who come from major metropolitan areas in search of new markets. As this case shows, we will put such predators out of business. The Assistant United States Attorneys in our Plattsburgh office are dedicated full-time to North Country cases and work with these folks and many other federal, state, local, tribal, and Canadian agencies to bring justice to the Massena area. But aggressive prosecution is but one part of our effort to combat the scourge of drugs like heroin and crack cocaine. Education, drug treatment, and the rehabilitation of addicts and low-level drug-addicted dealers are just as important. Patrick Lloyd came here from New York City because in Massena, just like in every city, there is a market for drugs. We will continue to work with you on prevention with community groups like your Massena Drug-Free Community Coalition to try to curb drug abuse, keep teenagers and young adults drug-free, and help people recognize the signs of abuse and address it before the consequences are tragic for families and friends. As part of that crucial work, tonight we are sponsoring a screening of a Department of Justice film, Chasing the Dragon, at the Massena High School auditorium. The film is about heroin and opioid addiction, and it will continue the conversations that we have been having about how to confront drug addiction in a community. This is a strong community that refuses to yield to criminals like Patrick Lloyd. We appreciate this community's support, and our support for this community will continue. I'll be followed by Assistant Special Agent in Charge Mike Kennedy from Homeland Security Investigations.
Thank you, Grant. I'm actually Deputy Special Agent in Charge Mike Kennedy. It's my pleasure to be here today on behalf of the Special Agent in Charge James Spiro for Homeland Security Investigations out of the Buffalo, New York office. He regrets he could not join us today. First and foremost, I want to take this opportunity to thank all of our partners, without whose contributions we would not have been able to achieve this success. Our collaborative efforts have paid significant dividends in the quantities of heroin and other drugs and weapons that were seized during the course of this investigation. These are dangerous drugs and weapons that will never make their way into your community. The takedown in September of 2013 of this multi-year probe has immediate impact on public safety, making our community safer with fewer drugs, fewer criminals, and fewer weapons on the street. We know firsthand the outcome of stopping the flow of dangerous drugs like heroin and cocaine and crack cocaine into our communities. When we take these highly profitable and highly addictive drugs from criminal organizations, much of the violent crime associated with criminal distribution decreases as a byproduct. And when it comes to aggressively pursuing criminal groups who exploit our shared border and the North Country, HSI is trying to lead the way for federal law enforcement. In 2005, HSI launched the Border Enforcement Security Task Force, or BEST, which brings together international and U.S. law enforcement authorities to combat and disrupt border-related criminal activity. HSI's investigative efforts in this investigation were conducted through the BEST. The BEST in Massena has been operational since 2012 and is tasked with conducting investigations aimed at identifying, disrupting, and dismantling transnational criminal organizations who pose a risk to public safety and the national security of the United States. BEST Massena provides an operational platform for HSI and its U.S., Canadian, federal, state, provincial, county, local, and tribal law enforcement partners. The BEST leverages the individual expertise and assets of its international and domestic partners, as well as HSI and DHS resources to share law enforcement information which apply to joint investigations, deny these organizations capacity, to regenerate their illicit resources and capital needed to survive. Again, we are pleased to join our partners to announce the results of this investigation. Like many of our cases, this effort highlights the importance of working jointly in the international and local law enforcement community. Thank you.
Under Sheriff Bigworth.
Thank you. The sheriff could not be here today. He had another occasion to go to down in Jefferson County. He did want me to say that he is proud to be part of that this investigation, continuing investigations. You can see behind me the brotherhood of law enforcement that it takes for investigation of this magnitude. We will continue to work with these individuals. This is not a Village of Massena problem. It is not a City of Augsburg problem. It is a St. Lawrence County problem. And we're going to do everything we can to combat this problem by the use of state, local, and federal agencies to help us in this mission. Thank you.
Chief Love?
Thank you, everybody, for coming today. Today's a great day for the people of Massena and should send a strong message to those who want to peddle their poison in a community like ours. Patrick Lloyd made some money during the relatively short time he was in our community, but he learned today that our criminal justice system, and now he must pay the price for his criminal acts. Patrick Lloyd can now look forward to spending 25 years of his life in federal prison. His drug dealing activities meant he missed the birth of his child, and that his child would grow from infancy, only knowing his dad as a man behind bars. His child, however, is just one of many victims of Mr. Lloyd and his organization's greed. Our community is much different today than it was just over 4 years ago when our department first started hearing reports of heroin in this region and escalating level of violence in the shadows of the local trade. It all broke into the public in October 2012 when our Massena Village Police responded to 15 Bishop Ave and found one man that had been beaten, a second man had been stabbed, and a third had been shot in the chest. Our investigators, as part of that investigation, located 1,640 bundles of heroin hidden in an upstairs bedroom. While we knew from our investigations and those from our partners in law enforcement that heroin was coming, that was the day we knew it was here. It was a day that certainly marked change on our streets. We saw gun violence, shots fired into vehicles, armed standoffs, and numerous armed robberies. We saw attempted kidnappings. We saw a dramatic increase in larcenies as more and more people in our community became addicted and stole to gain dollars to buy their next fix. It marked a dramatic change in the streets our officers faced when they put on their uniform and started their shift. It was a time when our protective vests became possible lifesavers rather than just another part of our uniform. Our officers did great work getting to know the players, and with the assistance of our local partners in law enforcement at the local, county, state, federal, and tribal level, we were able to bring this organization down 3 years ago this week. But while Patrick Lloyd is now off the streets, we know the problem that led to his drug dealing success started before he was arrived here and have continued, if not grown. While he's been sitting in jail, there was a market of heroin which served as a cheaper alternative to our prescription pill epidemic. When Mr. Lloyd arrived here and his organization efforts simply grew, the number of addicts here cutting across all social and economic classes. Our officers continue to respond to heroin-related calls. We've been in homes where first responders have administered Narcan to save the lives of overdose victims. And our officers have been at homes waiting for the coroner and notifying loved ones of young lives that have been snuffed out way too soon by drug overdoses. In 2016, we have had 16 overdoses, 10 attempted suicides, and we know depression and drug overdose are often linked as people trying to self-medicate. We have worked 106 drug complaints, 3 robberies, 34 burglaries, and 170 larcenies. We are proud of the people in the North Country, so we know Mr. Lloyd and those who have followed in his shoes are not going to destroy our community. Our officers continue to do the work necessary for days like today, and our community leaders have responded in an impressive way to address the drug issue in Massena. The current mayor and department former chief has long said we weren't going to be able to arrest our way out of this problem. He is absolutely right, and he has played a leadership role in bringing resources together to help sure that we address all components of the heroin and opioid crisis in our community. From arresting drug dealers and increasing awareness through educational efforts to working to improve treatment and recovery programs today. It will take time, but we as a community are going to win this battle. Mr. Lloyd would be able to sit in prison for the next 25 years and think about all that he has lost. Thank you very much. I hope to see everyone at Chasing the Dragon event tonight starting at 5:30 p.m. at the high school auditorium.
Mayor Currier, to have the United States Attorney and all of his assistants that understand the importance of a good cooperative relationship between local communities and the United States Attorney's Office and their resources. And today's a great example of seeing those resources come together to be able to pull the kind of team that we had in place for this investigation and to get the results. So we're so appreciative of the great work that they do. I also want to recognize my former colleagues, many of these law enforcement officials that I had the pleasure of working with, and thank them for their outstanding work on this case. It really was a team effort. And I think when you look at the results of this investigation, it was clear back then that we needed the best team on the northern border, and it's no more clear today, or less clear today than it was back then, that we need to continue to have the best team here on the northern border. So we appreciate their efforts, that's for sure. I have great respect for police officers and law enforcement officials who stand in harm's way every single day. We ask them to deal with the very worst that society has to offer us. We ask them to do it with less resources and have them do all kinds of things that no one else can do at any particular time. I'm so proud of the work, and I'm particularly proud of our local police department here in Massena PD. They do an excellent job in keeping our citizens safe, and even though we've obviously seen a number of problems caused from this opioid addiction and the heroin problems that we have in this community, it still remains to be a very safe community, a great place to live and work, and in large part that credit has to be due to the great work that our PD under Chief Love does. So I really appreciate the great work that they do. Today's a great day, and this is a wonderful sentence, and we're very pleased to see that. But enforcement, you know, it's very important, and we have to hold the people accountable for bringing these drugs to our community accountable. We've got to make sure that we're putting these people in jail and that we're dealing with it. But as a member of the Massena Drug-Free Community Coalition, I see firsthand the ongoing efforts that are additionally happening here in Massena. And we know that it's going to require a broad and balanced approach. And, you know, we've heard this a lot, but it is education, it is prevention, it is the enforcement piece, it's the treatment, it's support services, it's community development, it's community economic development, it's all of those things. And that broad approach is going to be required to deal with the drug issues that we have and to deal with the systems that are in place right now. But we also must increase access to treatment. We've got to make it more affordable. We've got to make it where we can recognize that those in recovery are in a lifelong recovery process, and that requires lifelong support for these people. We've got to reform our criminal justice system to deal with the addicts that commit low-level offenses. They need to be in treatment, not in jail. Low-level offenders do not need to be in jails. They need to be in rooms with windows and in recovery. But I want to be clear. Mr. Lloyd going to jail is the right thing. It's the right thing to do. It's a good thing for us. And there's a big difference between an addict and a dealer and a person that brings poison to our communities. And additionally, I'm in no way suggesting that people that are addicts, that commit criminal offenses, irregardless of the size of those offenses, they need to be held accountable. But we need to get them into recovery. We need to get them treatment. We need to put them in a situation where they can recover lifelong, and then obviously hold them accountable for the bad decisions that they made. So our local coalition here is working on a number of initiatives, and we have wonderful people involved, but we're looking for more help. We need more people to come to the table. There are people out there with valuable resources, valuable experiences in this, that could come to our coalition and help us. And folks, if you've been lucky enough to not be directly impacted by the heroin problem, then you're very lucky. But I'm here to tell you that someday you will be impacted in some way. Perhaps it's going to be a family member, perhaps a friend, a coworker, a friend of your child's. Whatever the case may be, at some point you will be impacted by this problem. So today I ask you to join our efforts and join the coalition. For 28 years I've served this community, much of it in the public safety sector, but now as your mayor. I knew as chief of police, and I know now more than ever, that we have community problems here. We have issues we are facing in this community, but this still continues to be a great place to live. We have a community of compassionate people, caring people, wonderful people, a community whose citizens never quit. We never turn our backs on people in need, and we'll never stop working together to keep our future bright. This community recognized this problem several years ago. They came together, and what's very inspiring is we continue to work hard, even though there are days that this is a very frustrating problem, and it seems like we're taking one step forward and 2 steps back on it. But this community continues to be driven to work together to solve this problem. So I want to close my comments by speaking directly to those impaired by the opiate addiction problem. Perhaps you're currently using opiates. Perhaps you're one of those people that are in recovery. You might be a parent of someone using, maybe a family member of someone that's using, maybe you have a friend or a loved one that's using. No matter how you're being impacted, I want you to know you're not alone. People standing up here are with you. The United States Attorney's Office and their resources are with you. The Massena Drug-Free Coalition, our members and the services are with you. Our clergy community, which has been very valuable in a number of the ways that we try to deal with this problem, are with you. 39 Serenity Place on Maple Street, which is a clubhouse for people in recovery, are with you. Comrades of Hope, a number of concerned citizens that have come together as a support group, are with you. And the list goes on and on and on. And I understand, we understand, that we lack some services and support services here in the North Country. And we're going to work hard every single day to gain further support, to gain further services for our citizens in the North Country. But it's important that people know you don't need to stand alone, because you're not alone, and we're with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll take your questions. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Joseph Gray. I'm the town supervisor here in Massena. I just read online today about another sentencing in Plattsburgh of a guy named Williams, who would travel by bus with his drugs to Plattsburgh, and then people would pick him up and take him to Massena, and he would sell here. And I'm assuming the people that picked him up were also selling and using. So my question is kind of, what can we as a community do to turn on the light, to maybe expose some of this? It's not our job to enforce the law, that's what you guys do. But as the mayor said, people need to be held accountable, even if they're addicted. So they should be accountable for treatment, but maybe they should also be accountable for community service, for example, as part of their sentencing, if they're in the criminal justice system. Even if it's not a sentencing, if it's a plea bargain, can we be a little more aggressive in getting, I know we want to get the big fish. I know sometimes we cut deals with some of the support staff, quote unquote, for the big fish in order to get the big fish. But at some point we need to hold the little guys accountable too. And I think we're probably doing that in ways that I am not aware of and that the community is not aware of, but boy, if there's some way we can help you hold the low-level guys accountable and bring them to justice and to treatment or whatever else they need that needs to be done with them, let us know. Because there's only a few guys like Lloyd out there. I commend you on the work you did. It's great. I'm glad he's been put away for 25 years, not long enough in my view. I've been on the board of the drug treatment center here in Massena for 25 years, I think, plus. I've seen what drugs does to young people, what drugs do to young people. We have dealt with, particularly with addictions in adolescents. But at some point, again, I think we need to do what we can as a community to turn on the light and get some of the vermin out in the open. And again, I'm not trying to say that we should take law enforcement's place. I want to know what can we do to help you do that.
The district attorney's office and local and state law enforcement work very hard to accomplish the things that you described. Identify those drug sellers that need jail time and prosecute them accordingly. Obviously, vigorous enforcement, as this case illustrates, on a federal level, vigorous enforcement and just punishment are crucial parts of our effort at all levels of government to reverse this trend and stop this epidemic. But as Mayor Currier just described, the best outcome for every person and for the community is not always imprisonment. And so, again, the judicial system, from the cop on the street to the judges at the highest levels, try very hard to identify, distinguish between those defendants or those people that start in the system who are best addressed and whose situation is best turned around, and that benefits the community, obviously, as well, by channeling them into a treatment program. At some point, and at some level, prosecution and perhaps incarceration are what is essential. But it may be that treatment, supervision, medication, other things can help turn a troubled, misguided individual into a productive person in your community, improving his or her neighborhood and the community at large. Anyone else address that?
I think you're absolutely right, and the concerns are there. I think what the community can do is continue to call on those things. I know from the law enforcement perspective, it's a balance of resources. You're putting so much time and effort into, quote unquote, as you said, the big fish, but there are the patrol division that's out there working the smaller stuff, but it's a balance. And then, after you make those successful arrests, then it's the balance of, should this person go to jail, should this person go to treatment, And I don't know what we're spending on county jail, I'm sure today, but so there's a number of people that are addicts and have been users that are in the county jail. And are we best spending our money on putting them in jail, or are we best spending our money on putting them in treatment to ensure that maybe down the road they live successful lives? So it's a balancing act. I know for sure we don't have it right yet, but we're going to try to work hard to make sure we get it right.
And I think you help most by making your voices heard with the troubled person, to try to get them to seek and obtain the help that they need. And if that's not enough, then by making sure that law enforcement knows of the situation and can take appropriate action. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Yes, I have a friend of mine that has a son that's been in the opioid. He's been some Percocet to oxys, and now he's been to the heroin. And they spent 1.5 years now trying to jump through hoops, trying to get this kid some sort of resources for treatment or whatever. And everywhere they turned, they couldn't get any answers. They couldn't even get him evaluated until they took a video of home of him in full-blown overdose. And he's now currently sitting in jail, and still they have no answers. They're still having to jump through hoops. They ask him, this kid has to go to a mental evaluation now to find out, where he's at. And when they ask him who's doing the mental evaluation, they get 3 different answers. They still haven't figured out who or when they're going to do it. And I think that's one of the biggest problems we have in this area right now. I don't know about the rest of the state, but in this area, it seems like there are no resources, or very limited resources, for anybody that is fully into addiction. And it's just taken too long. This guy, like I say, it's been at least 1.5 years, if not longer, since they started this process of seeking to get him help, and they still have got nothing for this guy.
Unfortunately, that is a problem that is not limited to St. Lawrence County. That is a nationwide problem. And so the administration has nationally sought to secure over $1 billion in funding for treatment type initiatives, so that every person who needs and wants treatment can get it. But that amount of resources has not yet been able to be allocated. And so we're still struggling to find the resources on the local level and on up the chain.
Is there any way to get those resources from the pharmaceutical companies? Has there been any work done looking for that kind of partnership?
Yes, and where pharmaceutical companies have not properly protected the distribution of their products, there have been efforts to hold them accountable for that. But beyond that, there are the public-private partnerships. Beyond that is obviously is a burden that falls on the taxpayer, and those resources are not unlimited. So the process of allocating those appropriately is still ongoing, but there is a nationwide effort to get more money for treatment. Others? Yes, ma'am.
Not a question, but more of a response. We do have, in our county, there are a couple of resources that are becoming available that the public should know about. Seaway Valley Prevention Council out of Ogdensburg received some funding for 2 new positions. One is a family navigator position, which is somebody that will work with families to navigate the system. And the other one is a peer support specialist. And that person is going to be essentially developing a peers in recovery throughout our county to help. It's not treatment, but it's something. It's more than what we have right now. So it would be peers working, peers in recovery, long-term recovery, working with people who would like to be in recovery. So those are 2 things that our county is currently developing. You'll see very soon.
So that's an important part of it too, getting the word out and getting the person who's in need of treatment to acknowledge that and commit to it. Any other questions?
I have one.
Yes, ma'am.
I was wondering, has St. Lawrence County considered opening up like methadone clinics, like as a way to like prevent relapse in addicts? And also with rehabilitation programs, isn't it also like a very long wait list? And typically people have to be voluntarily sign in. Why can't it be like a family member that's concerned sign you in? Instead of like the addict being voluntarily doing it.
I'm looking at Tanner.
Well, I'm just,
Tina's
I
the
don't think,
director of the Rose Hill Treatment Facility.
Oh, okay.
I don't believe that there's a law that would allow you to sign somebody in, like mental health has a law that you can have a 72-hour hold.
Right.
There is nothing like that in regards to substance abuse. I don't think currently that anybody has thought about an OTB clinic here in Massena. I do know that we are developing some Suboxone programs, and that is some, a start in the right direction, Medicaid-assisted treatment in this area.
And the issues about, what is helpful and what encourages bad behavior or facilitates it are, things that people struggle with in trying to determine where the line is. But I think it's moving more and more towards the emphasis on and importance of treatment. I think that's right. You can't involuntarily detain people. They have rights. Even drug abusers have rights. Everyone has rights. Anything else? Okay, thanks very much. If you have something you want to talk about that you didn't want to share openly, I'm sure some of these experts will linger for a few minutes. And if not, thank you for your attention.
Thank you.